Hello, Meet the Manager is back. Our regular catch-up with some of the best FPL managers of all time continues. Today I'm joined by Graeme Sumner, who is known by many in the Fantasy Football Scout community as Gregor. Graeme, how are you?
Yeah, not bad, thanks, Joe. Just about recovered from another crazy game week.
I know.
Thanks for having me on, mate.
I know, we had the Scoutcast this week, trying to make sense of the first 4 game weeks.
Yeah.
And, well, I don't know, we did our best, but it has been a very strange start to the season. For those that don't know, the Meet the Manager series, we interview a manager who's got a really good track record in FPL, lots of multiple high finishes, and then we also take a bit of a snapshot of their current game week. And the game week coming up is we're in the 2021 season. Game week 5 is coming up, and we are currently in the middle of an international break, and we've just had a hectic game week 4. So we'll chat about his history, Graeme's history, and then we'll also find out what he's doing for game week 5 as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up a picture on the screen of your career history. And as people can see, it's very good. We're going to find out some of your strategies of success here, and particularly those really high finishes. So looking at that, Graeme, you have been playing since 2009, and over that time you finished in the top 10k 6 times. That includes 3 top 1k finishes. 2016 you saw your finest moment, 29th overall finish. Wow. 2017 it went a bit awry, failing to breach the top 150k, which by your standards was a bit of an upset of a season, but you bounced back and almost notched another top 10k finish, only just missing out last time around. So we will ask about some of those seasons that didn't go as well for you, and I mean by your standards didn't go as well, but we'll talk about the other bits first. So where did it go right in those 3 seasons where you finished in the top 1k? Are there any common themes that emerge from those seasons, or was it just luck?
Yeah, really. Luck's definitely part of it, I think. But yeah, I had a really good 5-year period there where I was in the top 10,000. That's what I call a really good finish, top 10,000. Yeah. A 5-year period was everything I touched just seemed to turn to gold. You know what I mean? All the captaincy picks, transfers just seemed to go really well. I remember the guys in the work league saying to me, like, how are you doing it every week? Yeah. And it's like, there's rumours going on that I had this like vast spreadsheet on the go that I was plotting my every move on. And no, I've never had a spreadsheet. I do like spreadsheets, but I've never had a fantasy football spreadsheet. It's just I watch a lot of football, as much football as possible. Since football's been back this season, I think every game has been on TV. I've more or less watched every single game.
Wow.
And I check the stats after the game week. Always check the stats, and I just plan ahead. I look at the ticker a lot. Plan ahead for good fixtures. Teams have got good fixtures coming up. I do that a lot. So yeah, I was thinking back on those 3 years then, and specific examples of things that went right. And I hit a lot of good captains. Santi Cazorla's hat-trick away at Reading.
Oh yeah, remember that.
Yaya Touré's only Man City hat-trick against Fulham. Alexis Sanchez hat-trick away at Leicester.
Okay.
Charlie Austin hat-trick for QPR. Yossi Benayoun hat-trick for Liverpool against Burnley. Gregor 5 goals against Newcastle.
It was Newcastle, yeah.
Yeah, I just seem to hit on them big captaincy scores a lot over the years, and that's what really propelled me up the ranks, I think.
Okay, now, you hit those big captaincy scores. Why did you pick those players? The players that you've just mentioned there, usually there's 1 or 2, like a Suarez, currently a Salah, De Bruyne, that everyone will go for, Harry Kane perhaps. Those are not immediate. I mean, I had Yaya Touré for a while. I remember the season he did really well, but I don't think I captained him. And there were some others as well. Santi Cazorla was not a popular captaincy pick. Why did you pick those types of players for captaincy?
I do look for those opportunities. Oh. People say don't take ownership into account so much, and I don't. In terms of fear, it doesn't worry me if someone's got 50% ownership. But if someone's got a lower ownership but is a good player, I do look for those opportunities. So, like this season, for example, we're going into game week 2. We had Kevin De Bruyne on massive ownership, and Sterling on low ownership. So I was looking at them two, thinking, quite similar, same price, both good assets. And my thinking was get on Sterling purely because the high upside you can get from having him and captaining him. As it turned out, De Bruyne, Game Week 2 looked so good on penalties. Penalties look like they're going to be a big part of the season. So I didn't do it, but I do look for those opportunities.
Okay, I mean that is interesting. I do have Sterling in my side at the moment, so
Good
fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Yeah, so I mean that is interesting about ownership. Ownership is a big factor for a lot of people. I tend to think it's not so important at this time of year because the engaged managers haven't revealed themselves, as it were. There's 7 million people playing, and not all of them are that engaged and will be with us by the end of the season as well. Is that the way you look at ownership as well? Do you look at it a bit more, say for example, if you're heading for the top 10,000, do you look towards the end of a season more at the top 10,000 and make those moves?
Yeah, always compare myself against top 10,000, where I am in the table, because they're the engaged managers. You know that they're really more or less looking at it thoroughly like you would be. So yeah, that's what I compare myself against. Yeah.
In terms of the kind of strategies that you have in general, I just wonder what type of manager you are. It sounds like, I was going to say you're risk averse or risk taking, but it sounds like you're not averse to taking a risk.
Yeah.
And I just wonder about hits as well, whether hits come into it, whether you don't mind taking a -8 here or there.
I started keeping records. I think from the year I finished 29th, I started keeping records since then. And I think I average about 14 hits a season. So quite a lot of hits, I think. Generally at the start of the season, I tried to knock my team into shape at the start of the season.
Yeah.
Well, things that you try to get your first draft right, but you never do. So I take a lot of hits to try and get into shape. Often play an early wild card. Sometimes that goes well, sometimes less so. I don't mind taking hits at the start to try and get my team as I want it. So yeah, over the season. So at the start, I'll just take hits just to get my team as I want it. And then in the second half of the season, I'll take hits mostly to bring captains in.
Yeah.
I always think a hit is worth it if you're bringing in a guy who you think will be the captain, the choice of the week. I don't mind taking hits for that.
See, in some of the previous Meet the Managers, some of the managers we've spoken to are very, very keen on that kind of upside chasing. So I know Late Riser has been one, and Mark has been another that we've had on Meet the Manager who does that. So that's very much what your train of thought as well. So for example, just say next week, we'll look at your team a bit later, but next week on paper, Son and Kane have great fixtures. If you didn't own Son or Kane, that's the sort of move you would do to bring. You wouldn't mind taking a hit to bring those types of players.
Yeah, exactly. And I've got Son and I've got De Bruyne. I think them for me are the ones I'll be looking at next week anyway. But thinking ahead, Game Week 8 looks like a tricky one for the captaincy, and I'll be looking at Antonio for that. So if I'll either bring him in a free, if I can't bring him in for free, that's the sort of player I'd look to bring in for a hit, because I think he'd be cold that week.
And that marries up what you've been telling me about your career so far. The Yossi Benayoun, Santi Cazorla, Yaya Toure, these types of players, and nailing those hat-tricks. Antonio, we know, has got a hat-trick in him, and you've highlighted that as a particular case.
Exactly.
So not looking at ownership, not looking at price even.
Yeah. Well, if anything, his ownership is low, and that makes him more attractive.
Yeah.
And his price is low, 6.3 million for Antonio.
And price as well. Does that persuade you in your captaincy, or people you're bringing in, the price, where you think, well, they're expensive, they must be a good person to bring in? Or do you look at Antonio and just go, what, Antonio, why is he so cheap?
Yeah. Well, it's two things. It's the fixture and it's the underlying statistics. So Fulham at home, you can see Antonio after the restart on this season, his underlying numbers are great. They're the two things that I'd be looking at mostly. Yeah.
No, it's a good idea. You mentioned that you look at some of the stats, so we know the importance of the eye test for you. You mentioned you look at some of the stats as well. So obviously in the Fantasy Football Scout members area, a whole bunch of stats and tools there to look at. So what do you look at, and does it differ for different positions on the pitch?
Yeah, so the stats I most look at. Well, what I do after the end of every game week, I'll go into the members area, and I'll look at each individual match, and I'll look at chances created, shots in the box, touches in the box, and average positions. And then I'll pick up things from that what I've seen with the eye test. Let's take the Villa-Liverpool game that just happened this last weekend, 7-2 to Villa.
Yeah.
So most of that game I was watching behind the sofa, to be honest, because I'm a Liverpool fan.
Yeah.
Didn't captain Salah, so, So I checked that after the match, and I saw, Ross Barkley, 6 shots. And the average position, he was actually more advanced than Watkins.
Yeah.
It's that sort of thing I'm looking for. You know what I mean? £5.9 million for Ross Barkley. That's someone I'll be looking at.
Yeah. No, that's interesting as well, because that's bringing up what you're seeing in the eye test. So you're seeing Ross Barkley playing a sort of support striker sort of role.
Yeah, playing the 10 role, but getting beyond the striker. Yeah,
and then the stats marry that. I must admit, I do that as well. I've started a table this season called Current Game Week, just to have a look to see on the latest game week, and then you can look at
that's one of my tables. I've two tables I've made myself. It's the dangerous defenders. So I always like to have defenders with attacking threat. Now more than ever, I think it's quite important.
Yeah.
And the last game week's big threats, which you can see all the underlying stats, the threat that they've got. They might not have scored, but if they're having lots of shots touched in the box, those are the things I like to look at.
Yeah, and what about things like, I guess some people look at big chances a lot for strikers, and there's a lot of expected stats as well, expected goals, etc. Do you looking at them or?
Yeah, never paid that much attention to the XG stuff. I'm not ignorant of it, but it's not something I've paid that much attention to. I think when you watch as many games as I do, it's not possibly not that important because you're not really missing it. I think when fans are allowed back in the ground, and hopefully soon, and not every game's on TV, I think that will become important, because if you can't watch the game, I think that XG stuff is really telling.
Yeah.
And I think Fabio Borges, he's top of the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
He says he looks at the XG stuff. You know, it's good enough for him. I think it's good enough for all of us.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when it first started, and I was asking people who were very into it, what's it about? And they were just saying it just puts in stat form just the quality, not the quantity of shots, but the quality of them.
Yeah.
And so I was looking at things like, but this guy's got 6 goal attempts in this week. That must be good. But then they say, but none are on target, and his expected goal threat is like
exactly.
0.10.
They're all outside the box. They're all going wide.
Yeah.
It's a good stat.
How do you cope with the noise? Now, you've been playing for since 2009. Back then, it was a quieter place. There was Fantasy Football Scout Forum. There was no Twitter. There was no proliferation of the sort of YouTube shows that you're appearing on now, and podcasts. There's a lot of information out there. Everyone's got an opinion. 7 million managers. How do you cope with that?
Yeah, well, I think it's fair to say that I didn't cope that well with it when the season after I finished 29th, my worst season. That was when I became more of a member of the community. I joined FPL Twitter. I started becoming a lot more on the boards at a Scout, and I think it's fair to say that's one of the reasons that I fell down that year. I did struggle to cut through the noise. Yeah.
Why was that? Because I've been part of that sort of community for a number of years, and some of those years I've had good seasons and some not so good. But I can't find a way to pinpoint what it is I'm doing with that noise. What was the problem that season with the noise? Was it just too many opinions influencing you? Or was there, I don't know, what was the issue?
Yeah, I think before that, if I was feeling like I was having a bit of a bad run, I would take a step back and I'd just go back to the drawing board, listen to my own instincts, which had served me well. But that year, I just was listening to stuff all the time, and some things did seep through that, I made some bad decisions.
Yeah.
Remember that was the year the Gregor nostalgia pick.
Yeah.
Remember that? I fell into that trap.
Yeah.
That was that year, I think. Yeah. So I remember that I had Alvaro Morata in my team for Chelsea, and he was injured, he was suspended, and he was rubbish.
Yeah.
And they had the exact money in the bank to get Gregor in. But all the noise was, he's not at his best anymore, all of that. And I didn't go for it. I got Firmino instead. Aguero scored a hat-trick a week later, I think.
And I think it's really interesting what you were saying about Ross Barkley, because the noise decrees that Ross Barkley has been traditionally a bandwagon that goes wrong.
Yeah.
That people get him in, he goes up in price, does nothing, and then people want to get rid of him. But it's possible this season, in a new team for him, and a new role, and starting every week, which I would imagine he would do, that all of that noise needs to be just parked, and there's a new noise there. Trusting your instincts.
I think that's the thing you need to try and avoid, preconceived ideas of things. Like the Ramsey Torres season being a classic example of that. You don't think they're going to carry it on, but they do. Danny Ings last year, I'd never really had Danny Ings last year because I thought he's going to get injured at some point.
Yeah.
He always does. It's trying to avoid that, and I think Ross Barkley could be an example of that this season. I think he could be one to get, to be honest. The Villa fans are talking about him being on penalties as well, and if that's true, that comes to fruition. You know what I mean? Penalties are so important this year. you could be one to get, I think.
Yeah, no, I think so. So it's just a good example there, and you mentioned with Gregor as well about how you have to change your attitudes as well, but also avoid all the noise and go with your own instincts at times. Now, I hate all of that when I ask people what their strategy is, and they say, "Oh, I'll go with my gut" or something. So that's clearly not the case with you, because you have your eye test, and you've learned to deal with the noise. And if you look at the stats at the end of every game week, you mentioned the season where it had gone slightly wrong for you, and social media being influenced. What other factors were an influence that season? Did you sort of go against any particular strategies?
So I had my best season the year before. I finished 29th. So I was looking at ideas of how I could sort of try and close that gap, I guess. And all the other guys at the top of that Hall of Fame seemed to be more patient and take less hits. Like some of them weren't taking any hits at all.
Yeah.
So I thought, if I could just sort of try and take less hits, then that might make a bit of a difference. And I didn't take any hits at the start of the next season, and so I went against my normal game, and it didn't work for me. I like to be in the front foot. I like to be aggressive. That's what works for me, I think.
That's a running theme. People look back at all these Meet the Managers, and when I've always asked that question, where did it go wrong? They always say, I went against my natural instincts.
Yeah, exactly.
I am currently, don't know where in the world, it's got many noughts after it, and I'm going against my natural instincts. I'm playing slightly differently. So perhaps a good example. maybe I should just stick to what I know. But nevertheless,
low down as well at the moment. I'm trying to be aggressive, but I'm quite low down as well. So it doesn't always work.
But you're doing. Whereabouts are you in the world at the moment in terms of your rankings?
1.7 million, I think. Now.
So that's actually, considering the size of the pool of FPL managers, that's not too bad at this stage. That's within sight of getting top million and upwards.
It's actually about 500,000 better than this time last year, actually.
Yeah. So a strong start doesn't necessarily matter for you.
Yeah, generally I do better in the second half of the season. Yeah. 2 seasons ago, I pulled my best start ever. The year I finished 40-odd thousand. At Christmas time, I was doing better in that season than the year when I finished 29th. But then it just fell off a cliff after Christmas.
Do you know what? A similar thing happened to me last season. I had my best ever start, and I could never kick on. And I finished within the top 100,000 like you did. But a very similar thing happened there. Just could not kick on to get to that top 10k, which is where we want to be at. In terms of the game changing, obviously 7 million players has changed. Obviously we've got social media. How else has for you the game changed?
Yeah, so I mean, it's just the number of people playing and all the information around it, really. It's just, being able to decipher through that information. It's like back in the day, because I watched so much football and used the eye test, you could sort of pick up on players that would go under the radar. But now, that's not really a thing now. I think Zofar said it on FPL Wire last week. Like, nobody goes under the radar now. If anyone does anything remotely useful, somebody will tweet about it. So everybody knows about it. So it's harder to pick up on those under the radar players. So I think now there's no one really under the radar, but there will be low owned players that you can still get on. That's how you chase the upside now. You find them low owned players and get on them. People will know about them, but can't have them all, can you? So for me, it's about targeting the fixtures and targeting that ownership. That's how you do it. That's how I would look to do it.
Yeah, no, I noticed with so for example, looking at the way people look at players as well, that has been a big change for me. I remember in previous seasons, so I remember James Milner crept up on us all when he was at Aston Villa and became like nigh on essential for a period over autumn and winter. And it took us all a bit of a while, and some people got on to that. But now James Milner would have been, a player like him would have been clocked instantly. Ross Barkley playing as a support striker has been clocked.
Exactly.
And that's never, it's hard to find that. So I think maybe we have to end that search for we'll never find that perfect differential because it's all laid bare. which is
they're still there. Like I said, still there because you can't own them all. So it's just, for me, it's targeting those fixtures and bringing them in before everybody else does. You know what I mean?
I think what we'll do now is have a look at your Game Week 5 side. So you're about 1.7 million in the world. So trucking along quite nicely. For the benefit of those listening to the podcast version, this is a 3-4-3. You've got Martinez, Sace, Mitchell, and Alexander Arnold in your 3 going into Game Week 5. You've got Son with the captain armband in at the moment. De Bruyne, who's a vice captain, so under consideration. Foden, Salah, Jimenez, Calvert-Lewin, and Chris Wood. And then on your bench, you've got Forster, Lamptey, James, and Anguissa from Fulham. So just a couple of questions about that, just as a snapshot of the way of your thinking as well. 3-4-3 immediately sticks out. Is that something you favoured over the years?
Yeah, pretty much always 3-4-3. Last year started 4-4-4 at the back, I think, but that didn't last long.
Mm-hmm.
I do like the idea of a 5 in the middle, but the trouble with that is you never really have a 4.5 striker option that you can use.
Mm-hmm.
Like you look at now, Brewster's moved to Sheffield United.
Yeah,
4.5 million, which sounds brilliant, but for me, he's too good to be on the bench.
Yeah.
If I had Brewster in my team, I'd be playing a 3-4-3 still, but with a cheap striker. Mm-hmm. So I like to have the 3-4-3 because you always have the midfielders that can sit on the bench, but do a job. Like Basuma, perfect example, sits there, generally does nothing, but when you need him, presto, he scores at the weekend. You can do that. So I always look for 3-4-3, cheap as bench as possible, but players who play, and normally a cheap goalkeeper rotation. I've got Forster at the moment because I was hoping Forster would get the Southampton goal. Didn't come to fruition, so I've just got Martinez at the moment. But generally, 2 cheap keepers on a rotation.
It's one area of the game I've always been the same as well. I've really like cheap goalkeeper rotation, but increasingly I'm starting to veer towards the set and forget. I think these days, like Martinez, I think could be a set and forget goalkeeper even at 4.5. So that's possibly something that's changed as well. I
do like the Southampton Villa rotation is good though. So if I've got the funds in the weeks to come, I might get McCarthy back in and do that. The thing is, this season, with the virus and all that, you just don't know what's going to happen. So I think it's always handy to have another guy on the bench if needed. And I've always liked the rotation. Like you will bench points from time to time, but I think you just got to back yourself to pick the right one.
Looking at this team as well, so you've made no moves so far to go to Game Week 5. Do you tend to are you adverse to early moves? Do you like the information or do you're not bothered?
No, I do early moves. Yeah, I've got 2 free transfers this week.
Ooh.
So yeah, I'm going to move Chris Wood out, I think.
Yeah.
Normally I wouldn't advocate for taking a player out who's not injured and has a good fixture. He's playing West Brom. But I've had him the last 2 weeks, Chris Wood, against Newcastle and Southampton. He hasn't really done anything. So he's going to go. I'm actually quite annoyed with myself because he dropped in price 2 days ago, I think. Like, and if I'd known that was going to happen, because I was watching the prices, FPL statistics, I always do. He's about -80. About +9 is -80. I thought I'd be all right. If he was -90 and I thought he was going to drop, I'd have done it then. Because one of my strategies actually for the start of the season, I do like to keep value. That's why I take the hits. I play an early wild card. I like to keep the value because I think that comes in really useful later in the season. So I would have liked to have done that already, really, if I knew he was going to drop. But I'm going to look to get him out for Watkins, who's already dropped. He's 5.9 now, so at least that sort of offsets that drop on Woods. So I still have the 500 grand in the bank. Yeah. And then the other transfer, I'll probably look to roll if nothing else comes up, and then have 2 transfers again next week. But Reece James is one I'll be looking to move on as well.
So you're at a stage now with your team where you can address weak links, and is that another strategy as well? So obviously you've identified Chris Wood. I mean, I would say Chris Wood and James would be the weak links there, but the rest is fine. Especially Mitchell may not play, but he's such a cheap defender.
Yeah, exactly. He's got a good fixture next week, so if Van Haalen's not back and Mitchell looks like he'll play, he's a good option for next week. But yeah, I do plan ahead, so I could basically tell you my next 4 planned moves. Really.
Do tell. Yeah, so what are your... what are your next moves then?
Wood will be out for Watkins this week, and then I'll try and roll the other transfer. Then so James will be out for Bellerin. will come in from Arsenal. £5 million looked really good.
Mm-hmm.
Then I did take some notes.
Yeah.
Then Foden, I'm going to keep for now because he's got 2 weeks off. He's not been called up by England, so he should be fresh for the Arsenal. Then I look to move him on for Trossard from Brighton.
Mm-hmm.
And then I should have a free transfer to use, so I can upgrade at that point. Mitchell can be upgraded to Walker Peters or Charlie Taylor if he's lost his place.
Mm-hmm.
Or if Mitchell's all right, I can do Forster to McCarthy.
Yeah.
And then game week 8, when the Wolves fixtures turn and the West Ham fixtures turn for better, Jimenez to Antonio.
That sounds so simple.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, they sound like great moves. Very fixture based as well. Now, one thing we've seen this season is that it's hard to predict with fixtures. Now you're watching a lot of games. Do you think the lack of fans is an issue? Is home and away not an issue this season?
Yeah, it does seem that way, doesn't it? Which would be a problem for me, I think, because I always try to focus on those home players. I do target fixtures and I do preference home players. So if that's less of a thing, then football becomes all the more unpredictable, which will work against me, I think. Yeah. It does seem that way.
Just so far this season as well, who else have you captained this season? Because I was interested at the very start of this conversation about you getting all of those captaincy calls right as well. So who have you been captaining so far this season?
Oh, it started well. Salah game week 1.
Yeah.
Did well there. Aubameyang week 2, he ticked over. But then week 3, Kevin De Bruyne blanked against Leicester.
Yeah.
I thought that'd be a sort of tennis match. But then Brendan Rodgers suddenly decided he knew how to set a team up to defend deep, and he did come to fruition. But last game week, I went with Jimenez, and he blanked against Fulham. So again, targeted the fixture, and
Interesting that you say you captained Jimenez as well. I see you've got Son this time around, but De Bruyne is in your thoughts. Antonio, you've already targeted game week 8. Salah is at home to Sheffield United, and then he is also at home in game week 7. I think it's West Ham.
Yeah.
Would you be targeting Salah for game week for that type of fixture?
Definitely, yeah. If Salah's at home to one of the lower teams, I'd always captain Salah.
Yeah.
So next, Son or KDB next week, then Salah, then Antonio. That's the plan.
What do you think about? You mentioned as well about attacking defenders, and that's something you've always looked at as well. It's like the game's caught up with you. It's something you've always looked at as well. So, what other attacking defenders are on your mind? You mentioned Bellerin. I haven't heard Bellerin mentioned a lot by people.
This is it. Talk about no under the radar fix, but you don't hear people talking about Bellerin, do you? He got 2 assists at the weekend against Sheffield United, and that sort of passed me by until I looked in the members area. He got both the assists. And I remember the first game of the season at home to Fulham, he looked really good.
Yeah.
So he's playing 90 minutes every week. He's back to fitness. We've seen years gone by how good he can be. So yeah, I really like the look of Bellerin this year. Chilwell I liked. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, Chilwell went up in price. I might be priced out of that now, but Chilwell I really like at Chelsea.
Yeah, no, interesting. Once again, these are not... Well, I have seen Chilwell mentioned a few times since... Because it's hard to avoid his performance, his debut for Chelsea. In the league, but at the same time, these aren't defenders that are in many teams as well, and across midfield as well. Your midfield, apart from Foden, who you identified, say for example Trossard there as well. Are there any other midfielders that appeal? Looking at your setup, I'm not sure if a Rodriguez or a Fernandes is possible into that. It looks like someone would have to go really.
Yeah, well, I've got Calvert-Lewin for Everton. I think that's probably enough for me. And Man United, I'm avoiding at the moment. But I like to the cheaper bracket in there as well. So yeah, KDB, Salah, Son, they should be there for the foreseeable. And then I'll play around with that 4th spot a bit. Like I say, Trossard looks really good to me. Barkley, probably won't get Barkley because I'll be Wood to Watkins. Otherwise, I'll be looking at him.
Yeah.
Even McGinn as well looks good. 5.5. I'll be looking at him as well at that price point.
I think hopefully it's given lots of people a lot of ideas. These are some of the themes we've been talking about on the Scoutcast and other videos and podcasts this season. It has been a strange one, I think. But looking at your your team there, it looks strangely comfortingly normal. A 3-4-3, nice price points there, much better than I've achieved this season. Really good setup there, and that nice blend of differentials and well-owned players, and captain choices as well. And it's something reassuring about seeing that in a season which has been so topsy-turvy.
Yeah, it looks all right. Yeah. Moving forward, it looks like it should be all right, shouldn't it?
Yeah, it should be.
It's been such a strange season. It's like I say, I started off with the captain Salah, then I brought in Calvert-Lewin game week 2, who got a hat-trick. I kept Son, who got a quadruple. I kept Son again this week, so it sounds really good.
Yeah.
Then on top of that, I've had 8 players who have blanked. When I say blanked, I don't mean like the customary 2 points. I mean 0 or less. I've had 8 players with 0 or less in 4 game weeks. So I've never known a start like it. But yeah, hopefully now looking forward. 2 free transfers. It looks all right.
Well, Graeme, thanks so much for joining me. It's been a real pleasure to find out about some of the strategies behind those amazing seasons, but also get a snapshot about what's happening in Game Week 5. So I'll hastily make notes and try and copy. Well, I can't because I have to stick to, because that's the message here. You've got to stick to your own system. It's difficult to copy others, but hopefully we've given lots of people ideas. But for now, Graeme, thanks so much for joining me, and good luck with the game week and the rest of the season.
And you, mate. Cheers. Thanks for having me on.